What I'm going to talk about tonight is the dark and very, very, very dark history of the system that we live in. We live in a system, and there are people who are very powerful in this world who actually have think tanks that get together regularly on a regular basis, and they basically manufacture this society that we live in. It's a system. This, what we live in, with all the stuff that you see, wars, famines, corruption, that's basically the end result of these think tanks that get together and produce this society that we live in. We look around us and we know that there's something wrong. Because your neighbour next door is a nice person, your family are nice, people you work with are nice. People want to have a nice society where we can live in peace and just live and be free of wars. So you think, well, where's it coming from? Where is this constant tribulation that we have to go through? Now think 500 years back. 500 years ago, the Catholic Church. This is a depiction of some of the chambers of torture in the Inquisition. Now, you guys could easily be classed heretics and you could have been led to the Inquisition. So, you just think back to those days, the Inquisition and the Crusades and all the Dark Ages, and how much our brothers suffered, mankind suffered. And we see now that we know things are really gone pear-shaped. What's the origin of it? Well, I'm going to expose it. The Catholic Church, the Roman cult, has been very, very, very busy in the last couple of thousand years. Starting with the Julian dynasty, then the Flavian dynasty, then the Antons, the Antonys. We had the empire. Rome was a republic, became an empire. Just like that, overnight. They killed Julius Caesar, bang, Augustus. It's an empire. This empire is our enemy, as you will see, because it has morphed as it's gone through the ages, with the backing of the Roman cult and a very, very dark priesthood. What happened was this guy and the Catholic Church, always desiring to control with their inquisitions, decided that they would create the first express trust in history. Alright, that trust is called Unum Sanctum. What does the papal bull say that they created to stick in their vault and put their spell on that has cursed us so much, this Unum Sanctum? It says that all the world and all the souls in it are ours. Remember the right of claim? This is mine. Well, a claim of right. They made a claim of right. They rocked up, sitting on top of the world, look around, seeing all these people sleeping, got all these gold in their vaults and all this power, and they said, we own the world. And so they do, because no one has challenged that. No one has challenged Unum Sanctum, this papal bull. It's in the vaults. And it's a curse on mankind, and I'll show you how. This was the first express trust in history, so they have claimed the whole world and all the souls therein. And you will see, by virtue of your birth certificate, that that is the title of your soul that they own in their registries. They have registered you. And that is the title to your soul. We shouldn't be angry about the evil that they represent. It's the fact that they are insane. They're insane. The elite families who control the Vatican and who are behind this corporation, and it's the corporation of the Apostle Peter, because Constantine, we can go earlier than this, we can go to 325, Constantine the Great. Supposedly, hundreds of years later, they found Constantine's donation. And that donation was written to his Pope Sylvester, to his, Constantine was of course the emperor, the Pope was Sylvester, and apparently Constantine says to Sylvester in this document, St. Peter is the apostle of Jesus, that Jesus gave the kingdom of this earth to, therefore we're going to claim taxes based on that, on the donation of Constantine. We're paying taxes because of that fictional document, guys. All taxes to Rome and the elite families, the insane Khazarian and Venetian black nobility families, just like the Saxe-Coburg-Gothers, that the Windsor family, false name. These are the black nobility family, bankers, bullion brokers. There's a book called Babylon's Bankers. There's a chapter in there called Monotheism. Military, money, monarchies. He has exposed that this gathering, this cabal, they can't work separate from each other. A lot of people, when they see this pyramid of control, and they put the Queen on the top, and the Zionists and the Freemasons, don't understand that the Vatican and the Jesuits and the Superior General of the Jesuits actually sit on top, behind the scenes, that they work together. Then they have, that's the crown and the elite, insane families of the world who think they have better blood than the rest. And they have their think tanks. Then they have their financial control system, world resource control, world population control, and there's a little sheep down the bottom called debt slaves. We're all indebted. And we all bleed financially because they're taxing your wage. You go to work and you get taxed. Half of it goes to the government.
The fraudulent central banking model that the country sought to escape from when it declared independence in the American Revolutionary War. Now, going back to 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was not the only unconstitutional bill pushed through Congress. They also pushed the federal income tax. It's worthwhile to point out that the American public's ignorance towards the federal income tax is a testament to how dumbed down and oblivious the American population really is. First of all, the federal income tax is completely unconstitutional, as it is a direct, unapportioned tax. All direct taxes have to be apportioned to be legal based on the Constitution. Secondly, the required number of states in order to ratify the amendment to allow the income tax was never met, and this has even been cited in modern court cases. Third, at the present day, roughly 25% of the average worker's income is taken via this tax. And guess where that money goes? It goes to pay the interest on the currency being produced by the fraudulent Federal Reserve Bank, a system that does not have to exist at all. The money you make working almost 3 months out of the year goes almost literally into the pockets of the international bankers who own the private Federal Reserve Bank. And fourth, even with the fraudulent government claim as to the legality of the income tax, there is literally no statute, no law in existence that requires you to pay this tax, period.
I really expected that, of course, there's a law that you can point to in the law book, the code, that requires you to file a tax return. Of course there is. I was at that point where I couldn't find the statute that clearly made a person liable, at least not me and most people I know, and I had no choice in my mind except to resign.
Based on the research that I did throughout the year 2000 and that I'm still doing, I have not found that law. I've asked Congress, we've asked a lot of people in the IRS commissioners, helpers. They can't answer, because if they answer, the American people are going to know that this whole thing is a fraud.
I haven't filed an federal income tax return since I left.
I have not filed a tax return since 1999.
The income tax is nothing less than the enslavement of the entire country.
What's it like being here?
It's quite an experience being in the center of one of the most powerful spiritual places on the earth. I believe that this Vatican behind me and this whole entire arrangement here at the Vatican just reeks of occult power. The Vatican is absolutely replete with the symbols of absolute totalitarian power. You can see it everywhere. This place represents, in my view, the center for occult political power, which has nothing whatsoever to do with the Bible, with Jesus, Christianity, nothing. It has to do with some kind of an all-encompassing power over the kings of the earth. And it's homed here at the Vatican. The Vatican is a very powerful spiritual place. You notice I didn't say holy. You have to be here to appreciate how profound the feeling is of political power centered here. So therefore, it doesn't surprise me that kings and rulers and princes and industrialists and famous people all over the world from every country come here to pay homage to one of the most powerful figures on the earth. We call it the Vatican.
Okay, in 1455 we have a testamentary trust created. The first testamentary trust in history. That was Nicholas V, Pope Nicholas V, 1455. This was, bear in mind at the time, it's only like 20 or 30 years before Christopher Columbus sailed off to discover the Americas, right? This trust, this testamentary trust, which conveyed all of this property that the Vatican claimed, the whole world, they conveyed it into this trust. It's the trust that claims all your real estate. You know those titles you have? You don't own it. You own nothing. You do not own a thing. Well, you can't anyway. They're molecules. They belong to the universe, for a start. But the Vatican knows this. They know you can't own things. You can have right of use. That's all that that title means. You will never own it. Never in this system. In this system.
This human farming has been the most profitable and destructive occupation throughout history, and it is now reaching its destructive climax. Human society cannot be rationally understood until it is seen for what it is: a series of farms where human farmers own human livestock. Some people get confused because governments provide healthcare and water and education and roads, and thus imagine that there is some benevolence at work. Nothing could be further from the reality. Farmers provide healthcare and irrigation, and training to their livestock. Some people get confused because we are allowed certain liberties and thus imagine that our governments protect our freedoms. But farmers plant their crops a certain distance apart to increase their yields, and will allow certain animals larger stalls or fields if it means they will produce more meat and milk. In your country, your tax farm, your farmer grants you certain freedoms, not because he cares about your liberties, but because he wants to increase his profits. Are you beginning to see the nature of the cage you were born into? There have been 4 major phases of human farming. The first phase in ancient Egypt was direct and brutal human compulsion. Human bodies were controlled, but the creative productivity of the human mind remained beyond the reach of the whip and the brand and the shackles. Slaves remained woefully underproductive and required enormous resources to control. The second phase was the Roman model, wherein slaves were granted some capacity for freedom, ingenuity, and creativity, which raised their productivity. This increased the wealth of Rome, and thus the tax income of the Roman government, and with this additional wealth, Rome became an empire, destroying the economic freedoms that fed its power, and collapsed. I'm sure that this does not seem entirely unfamiliar. After the collapse of Rome, the feudal model introduced the concept of livestock ownership and taxation. Instead of being directly owned, peasants farmed land that they could retain as long as they paid off the local warlords. This model eventually broke down due to the continual subdivision of productive land and was destroyed during the enclosure movement when land was consolidated and hundreds of thousands of peasants were kicked off their ancestral lands because new farming techniques made larger farms more productive with fewer people. The increased productivity of the later Middle Ages created the excess food required for the expansion of towns and cities, which in turn gave rise to the modern democratic model of human ownership. As displaced peasants flooded into the cities, a huge stock of cheap human capital became available to the rising industrialists. And the ruling class of human farmers quickly realized that they could make more money by letting their livestock choose their own occupations. Under the democratic model, direct slave ownership has been replaced by the mafia model. The mafia rarely owns businesses directly, but rather sends thugs around once a month to steal from the business owners. You are now allowed to choose your own occupation, which raises your productivity, and thus the taxes you can pay to your masters. A few freedoms are preserved because they are profitable to your owners. The great challenge of the democratic model is that increases in wealth and freedom threaten the farmers. The ruling classes initially profit from a relatively free market in capital and labor, but as their livestock become more used to their freedoms and growing wealth, they begin to question why they need rulers at all. Well, nobody ever said that human farming was easy. Freedom metastasizes the cancer of the state. The government that starts off the smallest will always end up the largest. This is why there can be no viable and sustainable alternative to a truly free and peaceful society. A society without political rulers, without human ownership, without the violence of taxation and statism. To be truly free is both very easy and very hard. We avoid the horror of our enslavement because it is so painful to see it directly. We dance around the endless violence of our dying system because we fear the attacks of our fellow livestock. But we can only be kept in the cages we refuse to see. Wake up. To see the farm is to leave it.
As the poet Shelley said, rise like lions after slumber in unvanquishable number. Shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few.
I am lost.
Change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love. Are we in this together? Are we in it together?
Yeah, you're right. You wanna hug it out? No, not really. Let's hug it out, bitch.
a lot of this awakening and transmuting has occurred in the very, very recent few months. It gets better and better as every day goes by. I mean, you would have to be totally blind to pick up that things are so changing. It's a metaphysical change that is going on. It's not necessarily physical. It's beyond that. And you have to be switched on to pick this up. That spiritual and mystical things are going on around the world. I mean, we've been sort of focused on our minds and emotions and bodies for so long that the spirit and the soul and the mystic has been neglected. So all of a sudden now there's a balance, and we can, you know, we can walk through all of these different worlds, you see, because we do exist in the emotional, mental, psychic world. We do live in the spirit world. We do live in the physical world. They are all different emanations of the one us. But obviously now what is happening is that people are starting to see their spiritual nature a lot easier than what they did, say, 10 years ago. And how this is happening is just marvellous. And I suppose we can explain it in such a way. The sun is forever travelling through the universe, through the galaxy, and it's never, ever visiting the same place as it goes around in its trajectory. And that trajectory is, well, to do a revolution of the centre of the Milky Way galaxy takes 220 million years. So as it goes around and around, it takes us with it in its wake. And every different place that it goes to gives us a different essence from the universe. The Hindus say that all the heart requires is Sat Chit Ananda, bliss, consciousness and existence. That's all we need.